Hi, I'm Professor Kathleen Offenholly from the Borough of Manhattan Community College in New York. In this video, I'm going to talk about how you can create a variety of great online discussion questions for any math class. This is part of some work that I did with Glenn Miller for a chapter in a book. And part of what we did was we sent around a survey to ask people, what was your best discussion prompt? What was your worst discussion prompt? And thank you to all the people who responded and whose discussion prompts you will see today. Of course, the best ones. So Glenn and I started with the Strands of Mathematical Proficiency as our model. This is from Kilpatrick et al. In Helping Children Learn Mathematics, but it works really well for adult learners as well. So there's conceptual understanding concepts, productive disposition, which means wanting to do the math, procedural fluency, being able to repeat the procedures automatically, strategic competence, which is being able to choose what strategy to use to solve a problem, and adaptive reasoning, being able to change how you reason depending on what your situation is. And as we looked at the discussion prompts that people sent us, they fell into categories that we mapped onto these strands. The first category was prompts that encourage synthesis and analysis. We felt that those prompts led to students having a better conceptual understanding. The next type was social and emotional discussion prompts that looked at how students feel about math and their test taking and study strategies. For procedural fluency, prompts that ask students to solve content problems, and for strategic competence, prompts that ask for applications. And finally, adaptive reasoning were prompts that ask students to explain and to justify their reasoning. We felt that that led to more adaptive reasoning. So I'm going to take you through each one at a time and talk about some of the best prompts we found and how to make your own prompts in that category. So for the first, synthesis and analysis, our goals are that we want each student response to be unique so that students aren't copying the same post off of other students. And we want one student's response to encourage another student to respond so that students learn from each other and get a real online discussion going. So one prompt that really worked well for this was to post your muddiest, clearest, and most important points in the chapter, section, or lecture. One way you could encourage students to post more is to give a little bit more detail and break this out a little bit. So you could ask students, post your muddiest point. Be specific. Where did you feel you got stuck? And that way you can ask other students, respond to someone else's muddiest point. Give them some tips. What helps you understand that part? And then you cycle back through and do the most important or clearest point and ask people to say what they felt that was and give some tips about what they thought went really well in that section. And let's look at a few more types of prompts that are synthesis and analysis prompts. And with keeping in mind that we want each student response to be unique and to encourage another student's response. So another prompt that worked for this section was to describe in a short paragraph the relationship between independent events and mutually exclusive events. And so this prompt was for probability and gave a lot of nice detail of what they wanted from the student in terms of a discussion. Now, if you're not teaching probability and you're thinking, how can I do this with algebra and make responses unique? Here's another really nice prompt that we got. How does replacing x by negative x affect the domain of any given function? So this one asks students to really do some exploring and then post. And that means a student could look at what another student said, but they're giving a different example. And so they're doing their own synthesis and analysis. Another really good prompt was, read this article by Keith Devlin on how early work in probability paved the way for mortgages. Do you think mortgages are good or bad? Or maybe a mix, and why? And in general, asking students to watch a video or read an article and discuss some of the ideas in that video or article were really nice prompts to get students to do synthesis and analysis. So think of how you could use this in your class. Key concepts that students should be able to compare and contrast are good for this, or things that you feel they should be able to communicate to other people in non-technical terms. For our next section, we looked at social and emotional prompts. That helps to develop productive disposition for students. So our goals are, in this set, to introduce each other and build a community, to air out negative feelings about math, and think about where math is important in our lives. And this is particularly important for introduction prompts at the start of the semester. So I usually ask my students to write about a good and bad math experience, and that helps air out some of the bad math experiences. And I usually do my own good and bad math experience as an intro. My good experience was about infinity and the experience of infinity, just to show them it doesn't have to be about numbers. How does statistics impact your life is a great one to ask at the start of the semester. Describe how mathematics will be part of your future career is a great one for more advanced math classes. Post a trivia fact about yourself. This is no math involved. It's a little lighter, and it's a really good way to get things going at the start of class. So it does not have to be a post that contains math or math content. So think of what you would encourage your students to share their feelings about mathematics, what would encourage students to share their feelings with other students without ending on a negative note. So when I do the good and bad math experience, I usually end with the good experience, just so we end on a positive note. Social and emotional prompts during the semester can help students feel less anxious about math by having them share their anxiety and know that they're not alone. So one such prompt that I really liked was, watch the video a math major talks about fear. It's a great video, and ask students if they can relate. Another set of prompts was to watch videos and read 2 articles and have the students talk about, this was for future elementary school teachers, so pre-service teachers, to talk about how they would help their own future students feel less anxious about math. So you see again how that ends on a positive note. Students often wrongly believe that students who are good at math don't study, and so encouraging a growth mindset can also be a great part of social and emotional prompts. So, for instance, how do you study for quizzes and tests? What do you feel has worked best? What more can you do to help yourself succeed in this course? The person who sent us that prompt said she used to ask, what more can I do to help you succeed in the class? And that didn't work very well. This is a better version of that. Are you keeping up with the reading assignments? Do you think this course has the right amount of material? Do you believe in homework? It's a really good way to get a discussion going about what actually does help you learn math. And finally, post a link to a video or website that explains one of the concepts from the chapter. This is a great way to get students to share resources with each other. Next, we'll look at prompts to solve content problems. We want these to help students develop procedural fluency, but again, we want each student's response to be unique and to encourage another student's response. So one way to do this is a round-robin problem. That's the same problem, but where you vary the parameters or the representations. So for instance, if you do hypothesis testing using a real bag of M&Ms, each student has a unique bag of M&Ms, so each hypothesis test will come out different, but the students can model their own hypothesis test off the first student, usually an A student who tries it first, and so they can get help from other students that way. Solving a system of equations is really fun. You can have it done 3 different ways, graphically, by substitution, or by elimination. And for this one, each person can take on a different role in a different system of equations. So post 1 Your role can be to solve one group's problem by substitution. Post 2, pick a different problem in a different group and solve it graphically. Post 3, solve a different one by elimination. It's a really good way also to get students talking about what's the best way to solve particular problems. And another one that's really nice from one of our responders was find 3 different graphs that have the same limit as x approaches blank. And you could put in a set of different numbers there, or have the students choose a number. Non-routine problems also are a great way to do this. A very steep line, I love that, goes through the point 3, -5. What could the equation be? And that gets some real discussion going. And so you can also have students create problems for other students to solve. They should make sure they know the answer to their own problem, and they might need a little coaching on how to create a problem. So think of how you can give a prompt that asks students to use other students' work as a model for their own, so that they're getting procedural fluency, but they're also helping each other out. And application problems are a great way to develop strategic competence, where students can see the relevance to their own lives. We know that application problems in textbooks are often very contrived, so this gives students a chance to see it for themselves. So you can find a topic from our class that's in the news. That's one prompt. That's great. Or as a professor, you can assign each student one of the objectives from the course and research where that mathematics is used. You can pose this following problem, asking students to create a scenario that has functions in it with words, equation, table, and graph. And then they can respond to a classmate with the domain and range for that scenario. You can have students analyze an argument made by a public figure in terms of logic. It's a great one for a logic class. And this is one of my favorites. Find a variable in your own life that's increasing at a decreasing rate. Super for calculus. Or for statistics, find a variable in your own life that has a small mean and a large standard deviation. So the key here is personalizing it for the students, right? Their own variable, their own interests, their own categories, or parts of the math class that they want to talk about. And so we've looked at all of these strands. We've looked at prompts that encourage synthesis and analysis. We've looked at social and emotional prompts, prompts that have students actually solve content problems. And we've looked at applications of mathematics and getting students to really think of applications themselves, which is terrific. The one we didn't talk about by itself was this last one, justifying and explaining their reasoning. And that's because that should be throughout all the discussion prompts. Just by having students discuss with each other, discuss math, and justify their reasoning in your online discussion is going to help them learn the math better and be more mathematically proficient. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope this helps you think of discussion prompts for yourself.